A small black shape lay stuck at the water's edge, flattened, motionless. From a distance, I thought it was just a trash bag someone had tossed aside, the kind of sight you get used to along forgotten canals. I was ready to walk past. But something was off. Trash bags don't tremble like that. Trash bags don't breathe. I froze. My heart slipped a beat. The chill rolling off the canal went straight into my chest. I took another step, then one more. Gravel crunched under my shoes, the sound sharp and eerie, like nails scraping glass. My throat tightened. When I was only a few steps away, the dark mass flinched. The movement was so slight I thought my eyes were playing tricks. I bent down, and my whole body locked in place. Not a trash bag, not something lifeless. It was a puppy, a Doberman. Bones pushed through its skin, ribs sharp as skeletal fingers trying to break free. Its belly was swollen unnaturally. Black and tan fur clung to its body, soaked and matted from the cold water. Every breath was a thread about to snap. Its eyes, half closed, caught between sleep and surrender. I dropped to my knees. The concrete bit through my bones, cold as steel. The stench of stagnant water, sickness, and hunger rushed into my lungs. I reached out, pressed a hand to its neck. The skin was ice, but there, a pulse. Weak, fragile, whispering on the edge of silence. Then its eyes lifted and clouded brown, empty, staring straight into me. No plea, no fear, just quiet acceptance, as if it were waiting for the cold to finish the job. My throat burned. I had seen that look before, on Lena's face, my wife, when the final stroke struck. In Milo's eyes, my loyal dog, when his heart gave out in my arms. The memories tore back through me like a knife twisting deep. Since then, I have built walls around myself. No more love, no more loss. But in that moment, every wall collapsed. I knew with crushing certainty, if I walked away, I would damn myself for life. I stripped off my coat and wrapped it around the trembling frame. It weighed almost nothing, as if I was cradling a bundle of dry bones. My voice shook, but it held. "Hold on, kid. I'm not leaving you." It didn't move, but I swear it heard. I lifted it tight against my chest. Its frail breath brushed through my shirt. Cold water poured down my arm, but I didn't care. I ran. I didn't look back. Only the pounding hammer of my heart and the thin rasp of breath against my ear. My truck waited not far off. I threw the door open, laid the puppy on the passenger seat, then slid behind the wheel. The engine roared, tires tearing through wet asphalt. I drove like a fugitive. Every curve, every jolt rattled that fragile body. I kept a hand pressed firm, willing strength into it. "Don't you leave me. You hear? Don't you dare leave me," I whispered, eyes locked on the road. At last, a glow cut through the fog, the green neon sign of the vet clinic. I slammed the brakes, ripped the door open, and scooped the pup back into my arms. The body hung limp, belly bloated, eyes sinking into shadow. The glass doors burst wide. Antiseptic air slapped me in the face. A tech rushed forward, arms outstretched, taking the bundle from me. All I caught was a last flash of wet fur, fading breath, dimming eyes, before the white door swung shut. I stood stranded in the sterile hallway, hands empty, shaking with fear. And I knew, for the first time in years, I had stepped into a new kind of fight, a fight neither of us could afford to lose. The white door slammed shut, leaving me outside with empty hands. Inside came the rush of footsteps, The clash of metal, the hum of machines springing to life. The air reeked of antiseptic, sharp and soulless. A man in a white coat stepped out. His badge read, Doctor, Parker, mid-50s, lean frame, focused eyes carrying just a trace of warmth. "We'll do everything we can," he said briefly, then turned back inside. Through the glass, I saw them shave the fur from the pup's front leg, slide in an IV, and hook up monitors. On the cold steel table, that small body barely moved. Only the faint blip of a weak heart trembled on the screen. A young nurse came out holding an old collar. The metal was scratched and worn, a tag dangling from it, Bolt. She asked if I wanted to call the number etched on the back. I nodded. The call lasted less than 10 seconds. A rough, gravelly voice snapped down the line. "That dog's sick as hell." "I'm not paying for treatment. Whoever wants it can keep it. Don't call again." Then the click of finality. I stood frozen, fingers curling so tight, blood welled at my nails. There's a kind of anger that doesn't explode. It seeps slowly into the veins, making the heart pound like lead. Dr. Parker returned. "The condition is critical. Severe malnutrition, intestinal parasites, high fever, signs of liver damage. The bloated abdomen could be fluid or gas. We need blood work, an ultrasound, and aggressive fluids. If not," he hesitated, "we can let him go peacefully." My throat burned dry. "How much?" he told me. The number hit like a blow. Months of wages, gone in a single decision. "I'll be honest," he added carefully. "Many people can't afford it. They choose the humane way." I looked through the glass. Bolt lay still, breath thin, eyes half-lidded. And then, his head turned. Searching, his gaze found mine. Weak, but unmistakable. I remembered the day I signed Milo away. I had told myself I'd done everything I could. But with Bolt, I hadn't done anything yet. If I left now, I'd be the one to abandon him again. I drew a breath, my voice shaking but firm. "Do it. Whatever it takes." Dr. Parker nodded once. "Then we'll begin right away." I took the pen and signed the form. The letters wavered, but they were there. The door closed again, leaving me in the waiting room, heart hammering like war drums. By midnight, the silence pressed heavily. Not the peace of the forest, not the softness of rain. A suffocating silence broken only by the faint drip of fluids echoing from behind the wall. I sat against the glass, eyes locked on the fragile form under the red lamp. The nurse adjusted the IV and tucked in another warming blanket. The heartbeat on the monitor rose and fell, like a dying wave. A sudden twitch snapped me upright. "Just a drug reaction," she reassured. I nodded, but my hand never left the edge of the glass. In my pocket, I clenched Lena's old handkerchief. The fabric worn, faded, still holding the ghost of soap. I gripped it like a lifeline, holding on to the past to fight the terror of losing again. Dr. Parker stepped out. "You can go home." "We'll call with any change." I shook my head. "I'm staying." He didn't argue, just nodded. Maybe he knew. Sometimes presence isn't just for the patient. It's for the one waiting, too. I pulled a chair close to the glass, my eyes level with those half-closed lids. I whispered, "Listen, kid. I don't know if you hear me, but if you want to fight, I'll fight with you." The only answer was a small twitch in his paw. Could have been nerves. I chose to believe otherwise. The second hand dragged, torturous. At 3 a.m., his temperature lifted a degree. At 4, Parker gave a subtle nod. "A good sign, but too early." At 5, Bolt's eyes cracked open, clouded but with a spark. I leaned close. I'm here. I'm not leaving. His lips trembled, as if he wanted to reply. The first light of dawn spilled through the window. My back stiff, my neck sore, but my gaze never broke. His breath still moved, his heart still beat. And I knew this fight had only just begun. Outside the glass, the sky had turned to lead. Inside, the red lamp glowed over Bolt's drenched body. I sat on the edge of the chair, eyes locked on the trembling heartbeat flickering across the monitor. Every time the line dipped too low, my throat tightened. Every time it lifted even slightly, I stole a breath, terrified that hope itself could slip away. Now and then, Bolt's body twitched, small spasms, but enough to jolt me to my feet. A young nurse with her hair tied back reassured me. Just a reflex. The drugs and fluids are kicking in. Stay calm. He needs stability. Stay calm? How could I stay calm when his life hung in the balance by a single thread? I pulled out Lena's old handkerchief and clutched it tight in my palm. The fabric frayed, the color faded, but it's still carrying a faint trace of soap. I pressed it to my forehead, inhaled deeply, clinging to memory as if it could keep me from breaking. The steady beep of the monitor became our shared breath. At one point, Bolt inhaled sharply, chest rising, then falling. A tear slid down my cheek. Not just grief, a raw mix of fear and fragile hope. Around 2 a.m., the shrill ring of the internal phone shattered the silence. I jumped. Dr. Parker emerged, face grave. Fever's spiking. Heart still weak. We're adjusting the meds, but it's unpredictable. I gripped the chair until my knuckles burned. I'm not going anywhere, I said. He gave a brief nod, then disappeared again. Time thickened like syrup. 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:15. Each minute dragged like an hour. I closed my eyes, but my ears strained for each beep. Every pause longer than usual dropped my heart into my gut. I pressed my forehead to the glass, whispered, "Don't give up. You hear me, kid? I made you a promise. Don't leave me alone." Maybe it was a coincidence, but just then, one paw curled, slight but real. My breath broke. I bowed my head against the glass, choking on the weight of it. By 4 a.m., Bolt's temperature climbed another degree. Dr. Parker reappeared, his eyes softer. He's more stable. But don't get too hopeful yet. I nodded. But inside, it was like surfacing for air after nearly drowning. I bought a cup of coffee from the vending machine and swallowed a bitter mouthful. It didn't wake me. It only twisted in my stomach. I tossed it and returned to my seat by the glass. At 5, a small sound pulled me upright. Bolt turned his head. Not a reflex this time. His clouded eyes opened and found me, exhausted, flickering, but carrying a light I hadn't seen the night at the canal. I pressed to the glass, my voice breaking. "I'm here. I'm not leaving." His lips trembled, as if forming words. Then his eyes closed again, but his breathing steadied. By 6 a.m., the first light of morning cut through the window, falling across that frail body. Dr. Parker stepped out, his voice gentler. If he makes it through the next 24 hours, his chances rise significantly. I leaned back in the chair, my neck stiff, my back aching, but my shoulders eased. A faint smile broke through, though my eyes stayed wet. I knew this was only the beginning, but at least Bolt hadn't let go, and neither had I. In my mind, I repeated it like a vow. We'll walk through this night together. The next morning, I returned to the clinic while the streets were still washed in gray light. The hallway still carried the sting of antiseptic, cold as the night before. I took my usual seat by the glass. Inside, Bolt lay curled beneath the red lamp, his frail body tucked beneath the warming blanket. Dr. Parker came by and gave a small nod. His voice was steady. He made it through the night. But he's not eating yet. We'll try liquid nutrition through the IV. This is the fragile stretch. I only nodded. Words caught in my throat. All morning I sat there, talking to him. About the weather outside. About the maple tree on my porch that had shed its leaves earlier than usual. About Milo, the dog who once tore across my yard like a storm. I didn't know if Bolt could hear me, but I believed that familiar sounds might anchor him to this side of life. Now and then, his eyes flickered. Maybe reflex. Maybe proof he was still holding on. I clutched that tiny detail like a man gripping a ticket at the gate of life and death. Day 2. No great change. Still lying. Breathing shallow. A nurse told me, today he licked the tip of the syringe. Just a few drops of electrolytes, but it's something. Her words felt like someone had placed a shard of miracle in my hands. That night I sat in my empty kitchen. Neon light was buzzing coldly over the wooden table. I spread Lena's handkerchief flat and studied the worn fabric. I whispered to myself, "You don't give up. And neither will Bolt." Day 3. When I entered, Bolt's eyes stayed open longer. Still clouded, but when I moved my hand, his gaze seemed to follow. I held my breath, afraid to shatter the moment. That evening, the nurse smiled faintly. He ate a few milligrams of mashed food. Not much, but a start. I turned away, wiping tears with the back of my hand. Day 4. Bolt tried to stand. His legs trembled, thin branches in a hard wind. He collapsed after a few seconds. I nearly rushed in, but Doctor... Parker raised a hand. Let him try. He has to find balance on his own. I bit down hard. Watching such a frail life struggle to rise hurt more than any blow I'd ever taken. That night I dreamed I was back at the canal. The water dragged Bolt down, his shape vanishing beneath the surface. I jolted awake, shirt clinging with sweat. I sat in the kitchen with a cold cup of tea gripping Lena's handkerchief. I needed that past in my palm to remind me why I couldn't stop now. Day 5. They allowed me to feed him myself. I scooped a small spoonful, held it close. Bolt hesitated, sniffed, then opened his mouth. When the food slid down his throat, my heart pounded like a runner breaking the final stretch. He took 2 more spoonfuls, then turned away. I smiled softly. Enough, kid. One step at a time. That afternoon, as I stood to leave, Bolt lifted his head. His eyes followed me all the way to the door. That gaze pierced straight through my chest, like a thread tying us together. Day 6. I went to the garage and pulled out my old woodworking tools. The planes, the saws, Lena and I once bought to build a walnut dining table. A dream left unfinished, buried under dust. I sold them. The money would buy another week of treatment. If Lena were alive, I knew she would have nodded. Day 7. I opened the clinic door, and for the first time, Bolt wasn't lying still. He sat up, shaking, unsteady but determined. When he saw me, his weak tail gave a faint wag. Just once. But it felt like watching dawn break after the longest night. I knelt, held out my hand. Bolt lowered his head and touched his nose to my palm. Warmth I thought I'd never feel again. That evening, I sat beside him in recovery. I told him about the trail that led to the lake, about Lena reading on the porch one summer afternoon, Milo stretched at her feet. Bolt didn't understand every word, but he understood what mattered. He was no longer alone. The soft yellow glow of the lamp washed over his damp fur. I leaned close, whispered, "One day at a time, kid. We'll get there." Day 8. I walked into recovery. No longer the familiar sight of a motionless body beneath the red lamp. Bolt was lying on his side, head lifted, eyes flickering but following me from the doorway. My heart clenched. I moved slowly, afraid to shatter the dream. When I sat down, Bolt pushed against the floor, trembling legs shaking under him. He stood for 3 seconds, then collapsed onto the blanket. I nearly rushed forward, but Doctor... Parker held out his hand. Let him try. Standing is a decision, not an accident. I swallowed hard. Standing, such a small act, but for a life dragged back from the edge, it was a declaration. I choose to live. Bolt lay panting, eyes closing. I thought he was done. But minutes later, he tried again, this time 4 seconds, then down again. My chest tightened, but my eyes lit. That afternoon, I sat near him and whispered like every day, "We've come this far, kid. Don't stop now." Bolt lifted his head, and for the first time, his tiny tail stirred. Slow, fragile, like a newborn leaf quivering in the wind. I laughed, the sound breaking into tears. Day 9. 1 step, then down. I didn't lift him. I just slid my hand beneath, letting him know I was there. Sometimes he rested his head against my palm, eyes drifting shut, as if borrowing strength. Day 10. When I opened the door, he wasn't lying in wait. He was standing, shaky, but standing. And when I came closer, he walked. 1, 2, 3 steps, then fell into me. I caught him, held him tight against my chest. His breath was warmer now. His heartbeat is clearer. That touch sent a storm through my ribs. I had thought I'd never feel the warmth of trust again. But here it was, alive in my arms. Dr. Parker stepped in, his eyes gentler. You can spend more time with him now. What he needs most is safety. I laid my coat on the floor and sat beside it. Bolt shuffled over, slow but certain, and dropped down at my side. He lay his head across my legs. I stroked him, feeling the thin but living warmth beneath my hand. Good boy, Bolt, I whispered. 1 day at a time. That night, I didn't leave. I asked to stay in recovery. The nurses smiled and said nothing against it. I stretched out on a folding chair, Bolt curled just below. Now and then he stirred, ears twitching. I dropped my hand down to touch him, to remind him I was there. In the middle of the night, something shifted. Bolt no longer flinched at the beeps of the machines. He slept more deeply. His breathing is steady. I watched, vision blurred with tears. It had been so long since I'd seen sleep like that. Peaceful, not just for him, but for me. Day 11. I was allowed to walk him a few steps around the recovery room. The 4th still tethered him, his gait unsteady, but he walked. Every stumble, I didn't pull. I just walked beside him. And he tried again. This time, he didn't quit. Back at the blanket, he didn't lie flat anymore. He sat, head tilted, eyes locked on me. In that gaze was something beyond species. A silent vow. I'll go on, if you go with me. I couldn't answer in words. I simply laid my hand on the back of his neck. That night, when everything stilled, I whispered, "Listen, kid. From now on, we're not just surviving. We're living." Bolt didn't understand every word, but I believe he understood the one thing that mattered. He drew in a long breath, pressed his head against my leg, and slept. In the dark, I sat watching him, realizing this. Miracles don't arrive as thunderclaps. They happen when a frail life decides to rise, trembling, and take one more step forward. 3 months after that night by the canal, my house was no longer the same. Gone was the hollow silence that swallowed every sound. Each morning, I woke not to emptiness, but to the click of paws across wooden floors and the warm breath nudging my hand. We built a rhythm together. Morning runs through the neighborhood, Bolt always on my left, one stride behind. If I stopped, he sat. If I slowed, he matched me, as if every beat of his body had aligned itself with mine. Afternoons we spent on the porch, me with a book, him stretched across my shoes, his head resting on the leather. Nothing grand, just a piece I thought I'd lost forever. Then, one April evening, that piece shifted. I was washing dishes when Bolt growled. Not the playful rumble I knew. This one was low, steady, pulled deep from the chest. It made my skin crawl. I dried my hands, killed the kitchen light, and stepped onto the porch. At the back gate, a figure bent over the lock. The street lamp caught a face half hidden beneath a cap. Before I could react, Bolt was there, planting himself between me and the stranger, his body stiff, shoulders lowered, eyes locked. He didn't bark wildly. He growled, certain, relentless, step by step forward. "I've already called the police," I shouted, though my hands trembled. The man froze, eyes darting between me and the dog. Bolt quivered, his growl deepening. I laid a hand on his neck, whispered, "Easy, kid." The stranger backed off, muttered a curse, and disappeared into the dark. I shut the gate and locked it tight. Bolt remained at guard, eyes fixed where the man had vanished. Only when I wrapped my arms around his neck, murmuring, "It's all right," did he soften. I sank onto the steps, arms around the neck that once couldn't even lift a head. Now it was the wall between me and danger. A week later, he saved me again, this time from myself. I had left the oil heating on the stove, forgot it while wiping down the counters. The smell hit too late. Before I could turn, Bolt barked, not his usual sound. Sharp, clipped, relentless, an alarm. He lunged, grabbed my pant leg and yanked hard. I spun to see flames licking upward. I slammed on the lid, twisted the gas off, and flung the window open. Smoke poured out, the fire dying slowly. I dropped to the floor, heart hammering, sweat cold down my spine. Bolt stood pressed against my back, body braced like a shield. I turned, pulled him close, tears spilling. "You saved me again." From that day, I noticed. Bolt never slept deeply while I was awake. He lay near my desk, eyes half shut, ears tuned to every sound. If I rose, he rose. If I stepped out, he watched the door until I returned. And every time I came home, 5 minutes or 5 hours, he was there at the door, tail wagging soft, eyes bright, saying without words, "I'm still here." One weekend morning, I walked him back to the canal, the place where it had begun. The water looked the same, but no longer haunted. No longer a mirror of death, but a stream catching gold light. Bolt walked at my side, head high, gait steady. I stopped at the very spot I'd found him. Where I once thought it was the end, now it was a beginning. I crouched and laid my hand on his neck. "Kid, this used to be the ending. Now it's a new chapter." Bolt didn't grasp the words, but he tilted his head, eyes shining, tail stirring gently, as if he caught the meaning underneath. I understood then. The night I pulled him from death wasn't the close of tragedy. It was the start of a bond. And now, when he guarded me, when he warned me of fire, when he stood against the dark, he was returning what had been given. Love, once given, doesn't vanish. It comes back. Sometimes as a dog at the gate, sometimes as a tug at your leg before the flames rise. I tightened my arms around him, whispered, "We saved each other, kid." One summer morning, I led Bolt back to the old canal. The road was the same, gravel still crunching underfoot, the water still mirroring the sky. But to me, the place had changed. I stopped at the exact spot where I once thought I saw a lifeless bag of trash, the place where, when I bent down, I found eyes that had nearly surrendered. Now, at that same place, Bolt stood beside me. His body was strong, his black coat shining under the sun, his eyes bright and alive. I sat, laid my hand on his neck, and felt the steady breath. My voice shook but came clear. "Kid, this was once the end. Now it's the beginning." Bolt tilted his head, ears pricked, as if he understood. His tail gave a small wag. Just that, and my throat tightened. I picked up a stone and tossed it lightly into the water. The ripples spread, circling outward, fading into one another. I watched and thought. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, sends ripples. That day, I chose not to walk away. And that choice didn't just save a dog. It saved me. 3 small objects sit on the wooden table at home. Lena's faded handkerchief, Milo's worn collar, and the bent tag I found with Bolt. 3 tokens. 3 chapters of a life. Together, they taught me 3 simple truths. First, love doesn't shield us from loss. It only makes sure the loss has meaning. Second, saving a life isn't a moment of impulse. It's a long promise, paid in money, time, and heart. Third, what we give always finds its way back, sometimes as a dog at your gate, sometimes as a tug pulling you from fire. I lifted my gaze to Bolt. He looked back, eyes brimming with trust. No words needed. The bond between human and animal doesn't rely on language. It lives in presence, in loyalty, in quiet acts that echo louder than speech. We often think we rescue them, but more often they rescue us, pulling us out of loneliness, grief, and loss. I rose, and together Bolt and I walked on along the canal path. The sun climbed higher, our shadows stretching long across the gravel. Inside me, no more emptiness. Only the certainty that, from now on, we would walk forward, side by side, through every season. If you've stayed with me this far, maybe your heart is like mine, believing that every life, no matter how fragile, no matter how forgotten, deserves a chance. That day by the canal, I didn't know how long the road ahead would be. I only knew that if I turned away, I'd regret it for life. And now, watching Bolt sleeping peacefully in the sun, I understand. That decision saved us both. If this story touched you, share it. Maybe someone out there will pause when they see a life in need, and tell your story. Have you ever saved an animal, or has an animal ever saved you? Write it in the comments. Every story is a seed, and we never know which seed will grow into a miracle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Every follow, every share, is another hand reaching out. Another chance for a Bolt still waiting. Thank you for walking with me to the end of this story. Have you ever reached out to save a fragile life? If you have, share your story in the comments so we can spread compassion together. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because every bit of support is another chance at life for the Bolts still out there.